Hi everyone, welcome back to Casual Watch Talk Sunday Social. We've got quite the crew on hand today, on deck I should say, joined by Jason from Watch Rolling, Todd,
Hello,
Pete from Not So Obvious Watches, and Patrick from Pocket Watch Time. So let us know in the comments how everybody's doing. Nice to see a few of you already there. But should we kick it off with we've got some interesting subjects to go over today, but we might as well kick it off with a wristwatch check. Patrick, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Pete after.
Well, I'm going to let you all down today. I'm visiting my brother in Alabama, and I packed 0 watches.
Oh, no. Blocked.
Heresy.
So if you want to kick me off the stream right now, you may. I completely understand.
We'll see how it goes.
Okay.
Pete, don't let us down. What are you wearing?
I am wearing a watch, and it's not a smartwatch. So I'm wearing a Seiko, one of the many 62 mass variants. The white dialed 140th anniversary SBDC 139 of I think last year.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, because I did a bunch of dial variants. Todd, what's
Sam, let me redeem myself.
Oh, there we go. What have we got?
Hold on.
Did you just go lift that off someone?
Well, see, what's funny is, and my brother has a smaller wrist than me.
Tag?
I gifted this brother to him on his wedding day, and I think this watch is about 15 years old. It's an old Seiko Kinetic.
Old Seiko. Oh, wow, that's a crazy bezel for a Seiko. I thought it was a tag with that bracelet.
Yeah, so obviously he doesn't wear it because it's not running and it's kinetic, so it means he doesn't have to wear it much. And I just found out he has the smallest wrist in the entire world because I can't even get it to shut. But I'm going to borrow this for the day so that I don't get banished.
Good.
Awesome. And then Todd, we'll go to you next.
Okay, so I've got the watch I traded Jason for. I have the Fortis B42. Get it right here. Cosmonaut, trying to get that. There we go. B42 Cosmonaut. It is a big boy. It is a beefy watch. I love the way it feels on the wrist. And I'm learning to see if this will be a permanent addition to Horology Shea Todd or not. We'll see.
Jason, you're up next. What's the door?
I was doing my practice.
Oh, yeah.
My Zodiac.
There it is.
Yeah, it's not coming in. Anyways,
very nice.
You could tell it's shiny. Just my Zodiac Z0 Zulu Oscar 9209. Keeping it simple today.
Nice.
Okay, no surprises here. Got the date just, but I'm wearing it because we went to the local mall, and Pete will be glad to hear this. I tried on, and I've got a picture of the two side by side, the new Super Ocean, and I will say the case is exceptional. I still just cannot get my head around the minute hand, but that case is a real step up for a real difference between the last Super Ocean and this Super Ocean. The case is absolutely fantastic, but yeah, that minute hand still, even in the flesh.
And yet you wear a Cyclops.
Yeah. I mean, anyway, I did tell had a good chat with the Breitling guy in there, and sort of let him know about the show and stuff like that. So if you are watching, I didn't get your name, but if you are watching, welcome. Well, that was a really tenuous link there, wasn't it?
No, that was a good segue. I liked it.
So Sam, another Sam from Manchester. Yeah, we agree. We agree on the minute hand. Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone else.
Real quick, Sam, today's Jeremy Rice's 12-year anniversary. So congratulations.
And watch podcasts. Oh, yeah. Good.
Oh, congrats, Jeremy.
Wow, 12 years. I started 7 years ago, and the pool was pretty shallow of watch reviewers. I think there's TGV, Archie Luxury, and his crew, and then a few others. So wow, you've been going quite a while. It's good for you. Well, shall we launch into some of the topics for today? So we're going to talk about gradient dials, watches that should never get a homage, watch companies giving us trends because we buy them. Is it our fault? does Omega have a brand identity and the next watch for the plasticization treatment? Because in the recent Swatch interview, it alluded that the Speedmaster wasn't the first watch that they'd recommended or had looked at for being a new Swatch. So we'll go into that. But first of all, should we talk about gradient dials? And Jason, you noticed this week, didn't you? You noticed the Mido and a few other watch brands. The new trend seems to be gradient dials.
Yeah, I think there was a Spinnaker and then someone else. I can't remember. There was a much more expensive brand than Mido that I saw do it, but I can't remember which one it was. But I just thought like, and it was funny because I showed that new Seiko, the Sumo, last week, and that has a similar dial where it gets, it starts with the blue on the inside and gets darker as it goes out. I don't think it works with every single color for me personally, but I felt like with the Seiko one, it really did. But I think sometimes they get the blending of the colors not quite right. It's a little too stark, but it's totally subjective.
What does everyone else think?
Yeah, I think looking at that Mido, it almost looks like it's got a black ring and then a red center. It doesn't fade. It's funny, as Jason was talking, I was quickly firing up, some of the Seikos online, and it's a much more gentle fade. I think when you do that, you kind of perhaps give up some of the color, and maybe that's what Mido didn't want to do here. If you look at the Seiko, they've got that tuner that's like black and then fades other way around, I suppose, blue in the center and fades to black. There's very little blue, whereas it looks here like Mido really wanted to make a red watch, and as a result, that it's sort of red, then a hard line, then black.
Yeah.
If you really want a lesson in how to do this, I think Moser is the brand. They've been doing this for a little while now, and they nail it.
Yeah, they do, because it gives the dial almost a 3D appearance, doesn't it? I also like not that it's inwardly gradient, but I think the James Cameron Deep Sea, the Rolex, that's one of the best green, sort of aqua green to black gradient dials, fade dials I think I've ever seen.
I would say with this Mido, to me, the problem is that they've just got too many things. So they've got the bezel, which takes up space. They kind of have the chapter ring that takes up space. And then the colored portion of the dial is so small, they don't really have enough dial furniture to make a good gradient. So it does kind of get lost there. Even though as a gradient watch fan, I'm glad any watch does it because it just adds a little personality. So I'm happy it's there.
This is really 1970s though, right? Like that, the way the Mido did it, that I've noticed, like when they do a lot of reissues of 70s, it seems like there are a lot of 70s watches with that gradient, like that lack of fade, but more of a sharp contrast on the dial color, or am I off on that?
I don't know. Is some of that a sunburst? So I'm remembering 70 Seikos, colorful ones. They have kind of a sunburst effect with some of the dials. I don't know if that's gradient or not.
Yeah. Well, you can have different. I mean, like when you paint, you can have different. It all comes down to your style and touch, and then some people, like you lay the dark stuff down first, and then you fade the color over it in layers, and you can build it up, and you can use glazes, which have more of a less of a matte effect and more of a gloss effect, and then sometimes they use matte. I'd be interested to know how they actually produce some of these dials, because some of them, like I've seen the Moser ones, and like sometimes it almost looks like those things are hand painted.
Yeah,
like some of the Moser ones, because it's just insane. It's just nuts. Like it looks like the night sky sometimes on them. You know what I mean? Like if you've ever been outside, like in the ocean at nighttime.
Right. Their aventurine, I think it's their aventurine dial. Is that Moser that you're talking about, Jason? Yeah. It's just, I've seen one in the flesh at a Red Bar event in Philly, and the guy brought 3 Mosers. It was crazy. and it was just unbelievable to see the depth of that dial.
Yeah. It's the best 3-watch collection ever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you could stop after that, I guess. I don't think you need to do anything else.
Yeah, 2 wasn't enough. Had to make a 3.
Yeah, I quite like the way the Polaris. I just pulled that out because I
Oh.
quite like the way that's got almost a double fade in the middle, and then a fade on the outer as well.
Absolutely. I'm going to make somebody upset at me, and I'll say, generally speaking, I don't like JLC because I think their watches are a little on the boring side, but I love this watch.
Yeah.
So this strikes all the things for me. The case shape is great. I love the double fume. I even think the pushers are perfect. I mean, I said, if I was in the market for a JLC, and particularly with a cool complication like the alarm, this is a winner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, Facebook user who's asked if you're anyone in live chat. For some reason, we can't pull in the Facebook live comments into. We're using StreamYard, as you can see by their branding at the top, and I can't see who posted this. So, yes, you are in our general live chat, and sorry, we can't see who you are.
You know how early you had to be on Facebook to get that name?
Yeah,
you had to be on Facebook in like the first 2 days.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's what Mark Zuckerberg wants. We're all just Facebook user. We don't have identities anymore. We're just data. Well, awesome. Well, that was pretty. So, do we think? I guess final thoughts on this one. Do we think this is a new trend that's going to start being used across all brands? I mean, I know brands dabble in it, but do you think this is a? Jason, were you thinking that this might be the new trend for next year or the latter part of this year?
I mean, I guess I think it would probably start running out about end of summertime. These just seem like more fun dials, but I just noticed it was weird. I was like, huh, seems to be a lot of these dials.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Sam, I sent you a ultimate gradient dial concept in the chat. If you'll click that,
let's have a look here. Oh, here we go. Let me try and share this one up here.
This is what I think somebody should do. If it'll come through.
Yeah, let me just. Sorry, I've got multiple screens going up here. Smooth. Oh, the eye of
Sauron.
Is it?
So I think we should somehow find if somebody will do an eye of Sauron, because that's the ultimate gradient dial to me, right there.
Yeah, I think the Glasuit original 60s isn't 1,000 miles away from that. They did that orange,
orange red kind of.
Man, he's just staring into my soul.
Yeah. Don't stare too much, or else you'll end up buying an Invicta or maybe even something else. That's what'll happen. So don't hate us, Invicta people. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, that was pretty interesting. Let's go on to our next one, which is I added this one, a bit of a cheeky one, but with so many homage watches, and I know that term is used very loosely by the industry, but the true kind of homage watches, is there any, or maybe copies, is there any that should never get the homage treatment, like watches that are so distinctive that to make a homage of them just looks like it's a copy? I'll go straight out with saying the Omega Speedmaster. I think you cannot make, another watch brand could not make a homage. I mean, I know they try, but I think anybody that makes a watch that slightly looks like it just looks like they're trying to copy the Speedmaster. But I don't know. Anybody else's thoughts on that?
I was wondering where you were going with that topic. Absolutely agree. I think that the Speedmaster in the modern world does something really unique in that it looks kind of distinctive. In fact, I love that idea because it feeds into the one I put later about, does Omega itself have a brand identity, or has it just been eaten by its own watches? I actually thought of that slightly differently. Not so much a watch that should never get a homage in the sense of because you would always look like a copy, but I was actually thinking a watch which would just be pointless to make a homage of.
Oh, that's a good one.
And so I went with the Rolex Cellini.
Oh yeah, okay.
I mean, it's like turning up and seeing all these options and choosing the worst one. What would be the point of a homage to the Rolex Cellini?
Yeah, you mean if you're going all out to do a homage of a watch, then you've at least got to make it something that is familiar, not just a homage to a watch from a brand that isn't that popular. I wonder, is there one in the Omega catalog that wouldn't be worth making? Maybe the Constellation.
Yeah, although I don't think the Constellation lines up with the Cellini. The Constellation is actually, it's more like the date just of Omega. apparently it's actually Omega's biggest selling watch.
Yeah, very popular in Asia.
Yeah.
But, to go back to the original though, the one that's the slam dunk winner of should never have a copy would be a Ploprof. I mean, the minute you see that Millennium Falcon on the wrist, and I looked over and I saw Invicta, or I saw some other name that I didn't want to see on there, I'd just be like, oh, that would hurt my soul. Oh, AT and Tickers had the same idea.
Yeah, John, nice one. Yeah, you're right. There is a brand that does a homage of it, isn't there? I forget, is it Helson or something like that? It's called.
Yeah, I think it's Helson.
There is one.
You're right.
Yeah, there is one that does. But you're right. It's when you're doing a cheeky nod that you're inspired by another watch. That's one thing. But I think that what got me thinking about this was, I would say, I mean, it's obviously been done to death, isn't it? But the homages of the Submariner, I always think just they really look like they're just trying to go to be a fake watch. I think it is Helson actually, although I can't find the exact model on their website. However, they have got a bang on the nose homage of the 50 Fathoms.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah, I have a Borealis that does a homage to the 50 Fathoms, but it does a really good job of it. It's the original one it homages, and I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, I like a homage where it takes inspiration or it moves a design on, but when it's just straight. Oh, they're the Legend Diver. Looks like that's a straight up homage.
See, I couldn't do the Ploprof homage because if someone was like, "Is that a Ploprof?" I would be so sad that it wasn't.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Because I know people have their feelings on homages, but I think for like newer watch collectors, they're kind of cool if they want to get, if it's a good homage and it's close in weight, like you can look at the specs and verify, then maybe you can kind of wear it for a while to see, like, is this something I would actually want to move up and not spend X amount of dollars on? Like I had a Phoebus when they had their version of the Submariner when they first started launching watches. I got that thing for like $89. And I know it's not a Rolex Submariner, I know, before anybody punches me in the face, but it made me realize, like, if I was going to spend 10 grand, it's not going to be on a Rolex Submariner. That's what I learned from that experience. You know what I mean? So I think they can be good. But as far as that Ploprof goes, I'd be so sad. I'd be like, no, it's not a Ploprof.
Yeah, I suppose some of the Panerai homages as well are pretty on the nose. I mean, I know Panerai has its own fake watch issue, but some of the homages are really on the nose, aren't they?
I was thinking, what about the JLC Reverso?
Oh, that's another good one.
Yeah. I think that would be horrible as a homage. I mean, the Cartier tank is in the same vein, and people homage people, right? Like Seiko and lots of others have a homage, and I think that works okay, but I don't think the Reverso would work well.
Yeah, there's a Piaget that I think has a flipping mechanism that I don't know exactly which model it is, but it definitely is kind of homage-y, but at least it does look a little bit different.
Yeah, maybe the Nautilus as well. I know there's a few. Wasn't there one called like Bagel Sport or something that was
that's a horrible name.
Right on the nose of the.
I'd be a first string Bagel Sport player.
Well, I wasn't. I'm gonna show it now. I didn't misremember it. Ricky at Scottish Watches just did a great podcast with Jody at Just One More Watch, and Jody was talking about how he got sent a list from one of his suppliers who sends him watches. There we go. There's the Bagel Sport. He's even got Steel Bagel Sport on the thing. But he was saying that one of his Chinese contacts that sends him some of the Alibaba watches sent him a list of names of potential names for watch brands. And some of them were just totally like random, where they just tried to put two English words together. Clearly that Bagel Sport is...
That is truly the worst name I think I've ever heard.
It's intriguing though, right, Patrick? Like, wouldn't you want to watch
hungry.
At least 15 minutes of Bagel Sport to
I would.
understand what exactly is going on?
I would. I think it would be like curling, right? Right, curling, and then or something? Maybe you think?
I've got quoits in mind. You know, like old people throwing like those rings, trying to get them on a peg.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, that's a good
on a
one.
on a peg of cream cheese.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there we
Bringing
go.
you quality content.
David had some
Well-
good ones too in the chat too.
Oh
yeah.
yeah. What have we got here?
Let's see.
Rotary Homage, the Reverso,
Oh,
apparently.
sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that
Oh, no,
Hitler watch was a Reverso, wasn't it? But not made by JLC.
Yeah, I didn't know Invicta did a one for the El Primero. I had no idea.
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't know that either.
Yeah, I almost got the rotary Breitling Navi timer homage just to see if I liked it when I first started collecting watches. But I felt like it was along the lines of the Plo Prof. It looks so much that if someone stopped and asked me, I would have been really sad again. So I didn't. I got a trend going here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that was a pretty interesting topic. Still keep your suggestions coming, and we'll fire them up. But the next topic on the bar menu is, and this, Pete, this was one of your great ones, which is watch companies. We complain about trends so much in the watch community, but are the watch companies giving us trends because we buy them? Was that the spirit of this topic?
That's exactly right. I mean, take if a watch company rolls out a watch tomorrow with I'm going to call it a Uranus blue dial, because I ran a poll on my channel, and Uranus blue was considered far more popular than Tiffany blue, so I'm going to go with that color now. So if you had a Uranus blue dial tomorrow, we would all roll our eyes. And we'd go, oh, can't you be more original? You're just jumping on the trend. But they're only doing it because we buy it. It's like the integrated steel bracelet. It's like all of those trends that make us roll our eyes and go, oh, why are you doing this? Their answer is simple: because you keep throwing money at us. And I feel like, why do we kick brands that are doing what we ask them to do?
Yeah.
I know. They say that about the tabloid newspapers, don't they? Like, well, we wouldn't be following these celebrities around with cameras if you didn't read it.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, I could definitely.
Sorry. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, straight off when you said this, Pete, I was thinking of the Tiffany blue and the yellow, and Zinn did it, Oris did it. I know there's a few other brands that I can't talk about because I'm in embargo, but there's a few other brands that are like adopting this kind of multicolored dial. So that there has to be a market for it, doesn't it? Especially those different colored dials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and part of me is thinking, what do you expect these companies to do? To do their research, to have it come back and say, what the one thing you need is to have colored dials, and then go, but Sam's really not going to like that, so we're going to let all that money go. It's just, it makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a band where it's like, oh, this band is so good, they should become really famous, and then when they're famous, everyone's like, I remember them when they were underground.
That's right.
Very true.
But no, I think that actually turns around and even goes back to topic number one about the Fume dials, which is, as you said, we're kind of griping and saying, dear goodness, everyone's making these Fume dials, but kind of back to the point, they're really popular. It seems sort of a plain, in the olden days, it was a black dial, it was a white dial. If you were lucky, there was a blue dial. But now, if you just make black, white, and blue dials, everyone just thinks you're boring. So everyone's putting a texture, everybody's putting a fume, everyone's putting, some sort of brush pattern, something. And I think you're completely right. It's making us buy what we're complaining that they're making too many of.
Yeah.
Well, that's like the special editions that Seiko and Omega always get griped about in terms of putting out another special edition X, Y, Z, and we go and buy the heck out of them, and then we complain. Oh, here's another Seiko special edition.
Yeah, they're not hitting it out the park every time, are they, Seiko? Because I noticed that one that I made the video on that I said was overpriced. Suddenly, it worked out that it was overpriced because even though there was a limited amount of them, they still keep going.
Yeah.
Do you think it's it shows that it allows other brands to experiment, or maybe the original brand that set the trend then can go back and revisit it, or would they think they see it as a success because it's been replicated?
I think the one thing that we all tend to forget is that this design stuff's very subjective, right? Like, so there are some, you can go to college and take a design class and talk about symmetry and, all this other stuff, right? And it's like, even when we talked about homages earlier, people are like stuff that shouldn't be homage, right? I have a helm and I have a Zin, and I can see where a helm took some of their design cues from Zin. But I'm pretty sure, like, if I really went back in the Wayback Machine, there'd be someone that Zin took some design elements from, right? So, like the Saving the Ocean line, I had like 5 or 6 samurais from that line at one time, right? Because I love the ocean. I was on the ocean for years. It's beautiful, and there are I've talked about this before. There's just all different kinds of color variations and gradients in the blues, and if you go up north in the North Sea, it's just like angry, dark gray blue, like. If you go in this, you're never coming back. And if you go down to the Bahamas, it's kind of like I should be drinking a drink when I'm sitting in this water down here, right? It's like it's telling you, like, come on in, And I had like 5 or 6 of them, and at a certain point, I was like, this is ridiculous. They are beautiful dials, but each one was slightly different, right? But I think that I liked all of them because I have an attachment to the ocean, so the blue thing's kind of there for me. So another person, they may not like any of the 6, So when I ended up gifting, like, I sold one and gifted a bunch of other ones to fellow veterans that didn't have watches that I know. And I'm like, hey, you should have a good watch. This will run forever. It's cool. You like the ocean or whatever. And I kept the Blue Lagoon because to me, if I was going to go back out in the water, that's the kind of water I want to go to. I sure as heck don't want to go to the North Atlantic again. And I want to go down to the Caribbean or the Bahamas or, somewhere where the water is nice and blue. So I think that we just all forget that how subjective this stuff is. And like, I may not like the super color rainbow dials, like all the different colors, but I do like the yellow ones.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point that Jason raised. It's the idea that none of these things are created in a vacuum. I mean, I remember doing some research, going back and looking at where the North Sea, sorry, where the Royal Oak came from, and people think it was like Genta sitting in his ivory tower, being struck by this bolt of inspiration. In fact, he was commissioned by Audemars Piguet as a result of focus group information that brand had out of Italy, saying that there was a market for an industrial style steel sports watch that would be expensive. He was given that design brief, and then he's sitting in Switzerland in the like late 60s, early 70s, surrounded by, and if you look at like what are the cars that were being made at the time, what was the furniture being made at the time, it's all this kind of brutalist, hard cornered edged. We'd given up on the flowy Ferraris, and we had those first sort of angular Dinos coming out.
Yeah.
He rode the zeitgeist and turned it into a watch. And you can't imagine he was the only one seeing what was going on around him. I would bet that there would have been half a dozen watch designers probably with similar ideas at the time, because they all go to the same places, they all hang out at the same bars, they all see the same things. And that's clearly going to be happening now. All of these people that are designing watches they've got firms doing running focus groups for them. They're watching the same fashion magazines as everyone else. Of course, they're going to have similar looking ideas.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, that was interesting. Let us know, guys, in the comments what you think on that, and maybe we'll move to our next subject and come back for some questions later. But this was another interesting one of yours, Pete, and I think this will generate some conversation. Does Omega have a brand identity? And I was listening to the About Effing Time podcast with Adrian at Bark and Jack although Adrian Barker, I should say now, because he's just changed the name of his channel. And he said something very similar to this, that is Omega just the Seamaster and Speedmaster and Seamaster, and is that why there was such this furore with the Swatch one? But what was your thinking behind this topic when you came up with it?
It was pretty much that. It was funny. I'll take a little bit of time. I was putting together some notes for a review on the Tudor Ranger, and things just sort of slotted into place. We all know the history of Tudor. We all know about Hans Wilsdorf. We know about how a watch, an Explorer, a watch went up a mountain and came down an Explorer. We know all of that. And then I immediately started thinking about Omega, second biggest watch company in the world, super, super famous, massive company. And I thought, you know what? I couldn't do that. I couldn't make those notes. I had to go off and do some research and figure out who was the guy that created Omega. And then I found myself thinking, why Omega? Where did that name come from? I ran a poll again over on Watch Crunch, and like 90% of people have no idea who the founder of Omega is. 90% of people have no idea where the brand name comes from and what it means. And it's not about knowing the trivia, but it's about this idea that there's no story around Omega. There's two watches, Bond and the moon, and that's it. You got 4 points in space. But how? And it's funny. I found myself thinking, how many times do you see this quote? How many times do you see someone saying, just got told the AD's got my first Rolex for me. They know they're going to buy more Rolexes before they've even got their first one. No one ever says that about Omega. Anyway, I've done enough talking, so I'll let someone else take over.
It's a great topic, because even I would say to your point, a novice watch collector knows about Hans Wilsdorf, knows that he came up with the name whilst I think he was on a tram, wasn't he, or a trolley, and he just liked it because it balanced well on the dial, and that he started off with making watches with Bucherer, and it was it started in London and so on. So I think most people know the history, and also because there is an air of mystery around Rolex. You see the name everywhere, but other than a few select sporting events, they're not necessarily tied to. If they're in a movie, it's because the director of that movie chose to have a Rolex in. It wasn't because the Rolex formed part of the. You don't feel like Rolex, the company, was actually involved in promoting the watches through the film, unlike Omega with James Bond, and Hamilton with every other film that's not James Bond. What's a real
movie
though? Rolex actually.
In one movie, James Bond did go to really close to the moon, though.
That's true. But he was wearing a Seiko.
He was wearing the white Seiko, and that was a speed timer. So,
well, I'll sort of throw my piece on the Omega circle, because my second luxury watch was an Omega Aquaterra chronograph. And that's what made me realize that I don't really care for Omega, and I don't really care for chronographs, because I bought the watch. I know, Todd. I know. I bought the watch because Omega makes a better movement. I mean, Omega's, escapement and everything is a better movement than a Rolex, and I like the mechanics behind it. But when I bought the watch, I just looked at it, and it just didn't have a soul for me. It just didn't sting and make me say, ooh, this is special, ooh, this is fun. And I really just got bored of it, and I never used a chronograph. And so from that point on, I pretty much said, I'm never buying another chronograph because I don't use it, and I'm only going to buy a watch that really sings to me. And in Omega's lineup, the moon history doesn't sing to me, so I don't really care about the Speedmaster, because it just doesn't do it for me. The Seamaster, I appreciate. I said I kind of like the diving watch of it, but if I had to choose a Seamaster over a Submariner, I would easily choose a Submariner, just because I think it's a better looking watch, and I don't like the helium escape valve. So I said, to me, Omega just needs to come up with a star. And for me, their only star is the Ploprof, but that's definitely not getting popular opinion. So, if and when I get another Omega, it's going to be a Plo Prof. I just have to try it on and see if it fits.
That's interesting. So number first off, Jason, Patrick. Sorry, not Jason. Patrick,
No,
you're dead to me.
I know I am. I
You're
know.
dead to me. And I'll put this back up there. Make a pocket one. So I'm an Omega guy. I like it for all the reasons Jason. I keep saying, sorry, Jason. Patrick.
Yeah, I didn't even do anything this time.
You didn't do anything this time. I just want to blame you because I know
You're the default.
Yeah, you're like the older
Default
kid
to
that gets in
blame.
trouble.
Hey, real quick, my friends all know that if I'm in a room and something happens, and the people don't see what happened, I always get blamed, bro. And it's proven time and time again. I'll tell you guys another story offline, but keep going. I just want to say that it makes sense that this happened.
No, this is good. So I've got 3 Speedies. I've got the Moonwatch, the last year of the 1861 Hesselite. I've got the CK2998 reissue from 2018, which turned out to be quite an investment, as it turns out. And then I've got an older 1991 Mark 40. Are my 3 Speedies, and I think the design language is right up my alley. I really like it. I like the whole. I'm a big space nerd. Blah blah blah. And so that makes it. That's one reason I like the Pogues. The 6139 so much from. This is a space connection, and just in the fact that somebody snuck it aboard. I love that. They're being like naughty and they brought it aboard Skylab, but yeah, the design language is there for me. It's something I really like. Now, what do I consider Omega? Do I consider them a Speedmaster company, or do I consider them a Seamaster? That sort of thing. The Railmaster, for example, is an outstanding watch that often gets left. Right? Isn't it beautiful? It gets left in the dust a lot of times because it gets overwhelmed by its bigger brothers. There's a Railmaster I like. I love the 1957. Seamaster. That's going back to that clean design. To your point, Patrick, it doesn't have the HE valve, which I can, what do they call it? The peanut butter cup on the end. I'm not a huge fan of it either. The Planet Oceans, I like the way they look, but they're huge. So but Seamaster, I mean, the classic Seamasters from the 60s and 70s are gorgeous watches. Speedies, of course, have always been, and they've done a ton of different variations of the Speedies, like we talked about. So I like the Tintin. I'd love to have a Snoopy, just never going to pay that kind of money. But
Snoopy's
legit. Snoopy is legit, especially the latest one. Oh wow, that is some high end.
Hey, that was the first watch my wife saw on a YouTube channel where she said, "What's that?" This is before she owned any real watches. She's like, "Oh my gosh!" I'm like, "Yeah, that thing's legit."
Yeah. So. Yeah, exactly. So the opposite of Patrick, if I was between a Submariner and an Omega, I'd buy the Omega Diver. But are they? I don't know if they are too iconic, so much so that maybe Omega it doesn't. I think Omega as a brand is still known. I understand what you're saying, Pete, but I don't think it's that extreme. Anyhow,
I think that my experience has been a lot of people that are engineers. So in the military, we use that term. And there's a whole group of people that are like, I would be considered an engineer on a ship, but I'm not an engineer. Like, there's no engineering degree. Like, I'm not even learning any math past algebra. But then there's real engineers. And real engineers, I've noticed, really do appreciate Omega. And there's a gentleman I work with who his grandfather-in-law was like, helped out the Royal Air Force in World War II and got a letter and, ended up working for NASA and did some other crazy stuff. And that guy bought himself a Speedmaster in like 1979, 1980. And my buddy just got it. Original paperwork, sticker on the back of not sticker on the back of the case, but original paperwork, receipt from the PX, all that stuff, box, all that. They sent it off to get it serviced to make sure it's still working from Omega and all that stuff. Omega's going to put it in their little registry or whatever. And when I held that watch, because I appreciate and respect people who have the ability to make things, because I can't really make anything. I'm not a builder. I'll sell your bridge, bro. You don't want me building it, or designing it, but I'll sell that bridge. And when I held that watch, it was the story of the grandfather-in-law and the story that his wife told him, "Hey, you wear it. He loved you. He'd want you to wear it, that he's going to wear this Omega when it comes back." And so for me, that's what I think is cool with Omega, because as a little kid who researched Space Camp in Huntsville, Alabama from the public library, and then realized that there was like height and weight limitations and thought that, oh man, I'm going to be too big to be an astronaut. I'm all for that NASA legacy because we've talked about that, Todd. That's something that I think it's easy to poo-poo, and we shouldn't, because there's a whole group of people in the world, and I'll say it as a firefighter. Like, imagine being the first person that walked out of the space station or walked out of the spaceship and floated around in space. When you walk into a space that's on fire, you narrow the number of people that have done that in their life that can even understand that frame of reference. And I think the space thing's even more important because it's literally, it sounds corny, but like the whole new frontier thing, right? Like it's so cool, man. It's just so cool that I back up the thing, and I would like a chronograph just for that.
Yeah, but Pete, is your point that is real? That's still a cool part of their history, but that's just one part of what a brand that produce. I mean, I think I counted up once, and there's something like 111 watches that currently they produce that has the Speedmaster in the name.
Yeah. So first off, I'm an Omega fan, so I'm not kicking the brand. Secondly, I'm not saying ditch the moon and ditch James Bond. I think those are fantastic, points in space that you want to keep as part of your story. But I suppose someone's already mentioned it, the Railmaster.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the Railmaster fit in that story? So if we talk about Rolex, every watch has a story. Why do I want to buy an Explorer? It went up a mountain in OP and it came down an Explorer. The Sea Dweller has an independent history and an idea around it, sort of separate to the Submariner. And so it has its own story, its own narrative, its own reason for being. And even then, through all of that, there's this narrative that runs around Rolex and who Rolex is. And if you've got a Submariner and you love that, you really should look at the Datejust. And you just don't get that with Omega. You don't feel like, I love the moon, the Speedmaster got me in, there's a thread to follow, and I'll end up buying an Aquaterra. Yeah. It's just not there.
They have it there though, Pete. They have it. I mean, that triple collection with the Railmaster, Speedmaster, and Seamaster. They could have made a 30-second commercial that showed travel linear, like we were on the rails, we were underwater, we were on top of the water, we were in the sky, we went to the moon, and they don't do that. And you could throw some money at that.
Yeah, and you can even go back and see where the name Omega came from, by the way. So it's a story, but I won't go down it. But that name, where that name came from and why they came up with it was because, the brothers that formed the brand that became Omega felt that they had made the ultimate movement that could be used by anyone, no matter where you were. Isn't that a great tagline? Shouldn't that be in every ad they ever make for an Omega?
Yeah.
No matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, we've got you.
Yeah.
And there's a narrative. That's a story to sell. But they don't.
Hire Pete.
Yeah, and to the and Jason, to your point about the Railmaster being a great watch, but I don't think that I could confidently say why the Railmaster was created, because if somebody said, "What's the ultimate railway watch?" you think of Ball straight away, because they have the story about the train crash that happened, and they had to have a highly accurate watch that allowed them to time. So these fatal train crashes would never happen again in the US. So Ball has that story around why there is a rail watch. So, but I don't know whether Omega is even linked to railways, is it, or does rail mean something else in the Omega world?
I don't know, but I mean,
well, that's it. Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
They have enough. They have enough of a budget to hire someone to figure that out.
Yeah.
See, and that's my point, right? I mean, I'll always go back to this. I mean, like, we're all professionals here, right? Like, if you have $100 budget, if you're not spending $20 of that budget or X amount percentage you want, whatever, to tell your story, you're screwing up. Especially in this day and age when you can get 5 guys like us to go on a freaking video call and talk about this stuff. They could do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Adrian at Bark and Jack made a really good point on his About Effing Time podcast. Now, I shouldn't plug them because I think they're live at the same time as us tonight. But anyway, or a half an hour afterwards, he made the point that last year it was lucky that the he kind of argued both sides of the moon swatch, and one was saying that actually it was lucky because last year, 2020 was a really bad year for Omega, because not only did the Bond film get delayed for 2 years, and they had that watch released when it was supposed to go live, but also the Tokyo Olympics got bumped an entire year as well. So he made the point that they have all of their eggs in those kind of two baskets in terms of this is the real boost that we get because of these two events that usually happen every 4 years. New Bond film and then the Olympics, and they were saying that they got a real marketing bit of a disaster on their hands, and that the moon swatch perhaps got them back into the forefront.
I think they do a poor job explaining that, though, Sam. And I get that people don't like the word transparency all the time, but I think that if you basic leadership tenets, right? If you have 10 people, 2 people are superstars, 2 people you could do without, and 6 people ride the fence. Your only job as a leader is get those 6 people in the middle to go towards the 2 superstars, right? So my point with that is like if Omega came out and said, "Hey, we usually have these events. This is happening. This happens. X equals Y, whatever." Well, I'm pretty sure 7 people would be like, "Cool, we understand. It's a first world problem." And then you'd have some trolls being like, blah, blah, blah. But whatever, right? If they just explain something, then everybody else would kind of understand and get why this stuff's not happening. But the problem is these companies don't say anything. And I think it's on purpose because it creates conjecture. And people get on their live streams and they discuss it. And they say the company's name for free and don't get anything in return for it. And then everyone's talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Patrick.
I say just 2 parts to something that was said there. One, I'm going to save myself from hate mail. I do not hate Omega. And anyone who's brave enough to jump out of an aluminum spaceship into a death vacuum has steel where steel counts. So, I give them bravery. I just, the watch doesn't sing to me. But back to what Jason was just saying, where I think Omega's dropping the ball a bit is, they've got a gorgeous commercial. I love the commercial because I'm a techie and I love gears and I love machinery, where they've got these little animatronic people spinning and doing all this. Yeah. But that beautiful ad where Omega pretty much is saying without saying, "Hi, we make the best movements. We make beautiful watches." That's falling into my ears, but I think that's skipping 99% of the watch people. They need to do kind of what, Rolex does or, the other big brands and make something, for lack of a better word, dumber, but more beautiful. That pretty much gives it a story, like Sam was saying, our watch has done this, and really, really make it more purchasable by America and society. Yeah. And so, I said, Omega, I just think needs to concentrate on that to make their brand maybe a little bit more popular everywhere, even though it is popular.
Yeah. That's true. I mean, the Railmaster was an engineer's watch, so to your point, it's a little different than the Ball or the Hamilton railroad watches. It was designed to withstand a lot of Gauss, to be around heavy machinery, to be able to withstand that sort of environment. So it's highly shielded and that sort of thing, at least historically. And so I guess maybe there's a little bit of problem with the narrative on how do you. I'm trying to think here, right? How do you, if I'm Omega, how do I advertise the history of the Railmaster as an example? Or the Constellation actually is a really easy one, right? It's an observatory trials watch, et cetera, et cetera. But does this work well to the public that wants to see, ooh, James Bond wears this watch, who's a fictional character who doesn't do anything, but it sells you Seamasters. I don't know if Omega knows how to do the narrative.
Yeah, I mean, because that Constellation. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pete. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you run an ad campaign and you tell everyone, a couple of pub quiz question answers, and that's it. They're all running out and buying Constellations. It's about, it's the Rolex. We are at the end of half a century of them spending 40% of their turnover on telling us the Rolex story. Yep. So it's. If this isn't about next quarter's ad campaign. This is about Omega deciding in the 2030s, perhaps, more people are going to buy Constellations.
Yeah, and I think as well, their celebrity endorsements are a bit weird for Omega. I mean, they have famous actors and actresses, but it doesn't tell a story. Whereas Tudor having, Lady Gaga and David Beckham, they're interweaved. You understand why they're the ambassadors for Tudor because of, David Beckham with his kind of cool, trendy, you see him with the chronograph on the bun strap, and Lady Gaga with her kind of the Born This Way, song that she had, and then the narrative throughout her music career. And that lays into the Tudor. You can tell how they're tied together, whereas Omega just has, here's a famous person wearing our watch. And it doesn't really, even Rolex with their directors kind of, when they had like Martin Scorsese who talked about it.
But that's all Rolex. I mean, I just bought that book. I have to start reading it. The one with the brand written by the gentleman with the PhD. I can't remember the name of the book but I just literally just got it. It was advertised on Instagram. I got it. But my whole thing is like all Rolexes. My whole life has ever been as cool. You get a Rolex, you're cool. It don't matter really which Rolex you get. Once someone's like, "Hey, what's that on your wrist?" You're like, "This is my Rolex." What was that, Pete? The Cellini or whatever?
Yeah.
It's a Rolex, bro. It could be the Rolex Oreo. No one's going to care. But if you told someone it's an Omega, they'd be like, what's the mathematical probability of everyone just automatically knowing what an Omega is and then which one? People know the Submariner and they don't even know they know the Submariner because there's so many homages to it, that they see something that they know they like and they probably don't even realize it. I mean, there's got to be some people that don't even realize it comes from Rolex.
Yeah, exactly.
They just know the K shape, the bezel and all that stuff. I don't know.
Cool.
But they should do a better job telling the story because they have a cool story. But I think what they try to do is they try to compete with Rolex head up, and you're not going to because all Rolex wants you to be is cool. Omega, you have to be like a cool engineer to get it.
It's interesting. Ariel Adams has done a lot. He's done a lot of interviews and research into the Swatch Group generally, and his theory is that the entire Swatch Group, every brand within it, is essentially a bunch of factories and watchmakers that have come together and just don't have that concept of telling a story. It's interesting that the guy that created Rolex wasn't a watchmaker. And had no interest in making watches. He was right from the beginning sourcing parts. He was a marketer, and that's kind of at the core of who they are. So maybe the idea that Omega would take on some of that and start telling this big grand narrative of who they are might actually just be really difficult for them to do. It's just not who they are culturally. It's not who a whole bunch of their buyers are.
Yeah, I think you're right. I call Rolex, I say that Rolex is a marketing company that makes a very good watch. And Omega is a watch company that does very good marketing. Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I kind of reverse the raison d'etre for Rolex in many ways. It doesn't. I'm not denigrating Rolex's watches. They're excellent, but it seems to be that maybe, to your point, Pete, that's a little bit about what it is.
Yeah. I mean, Omega's problem could be like you see some of these smaller companies. I know we all follow different companies, but there's some like independent brands out there that really lean into the military stuff, right? And I don't know if we're supposed to name names on here, Sam, so I'm not going to. But there's some, they get featured in television shows and they align themselves with like special forces and yada yada yada, right? Those watches sell in a specific demographic because those are bad A people doing bad A stuff. And if Omega just sold the BA people they had doing BA stuff in their watches, they'd be just as cool as Rolex, because all Rolex ever does, not in the past, but now, is just have cool people doing cool stuff in their cool watches, and then you're cool because you have one by association. Omega literally has, you know what I mean? Like, come on, man, Omega, hire someone to go up into a ship that's like the spaceship and have a Red Bull in their hand, an Omega on this wrist, and jump out and parachute from space.
Yep.
And then sell that watch.
You have a better movement. You've got better everything to do with it. You just need to package it.
Yeah, and for Jeremy, I don't know if he's talking about me with Rolex, but
Tudor. He's talking about Tudor because he said he's Tudor trendy, and I said yes in the comments, and then that was his response. Yeah, his reply. He doesn't agree that I thought it was trendy.
And that's the way I think. I don't feel like Rolex is. I mean, I know they do some, and they have done cutting edge stuff, But like if we're talking about like right now, you know, it's just that they're cool, man. And someone's going to be, there's that kid in class every year that is cool and doesn't even have to try. You know, and there's going to be one, and Rolex is that kid. They're
That
just
wasn't
cool.
me.
Well, should we move on to our last topic here to close this out for, which I was thinking about this today because in that article that Mr. Hayek mentioned about the Moon Swatch and the collab there, he mentioned that there might have been other watches that they considered, like the 50 Fathoms. So a bit of fun here, I guess. Does anybody, what watch do you think is going to get plasticized at the plasticization process next from maybe Swatch's catalog, or is another brand going to try and make a plastic version of a classic watch?
I've got a head start here. I did a video on this a couple of weeks ago, so it'll be the 50 Fathoms, without doubt. Absolutely, put your money on it right now.
But Pete, the thing I don't understand about that, I mean, one, I think the 50 Fathoms is a great watch. If I had to choose between a Rolex, an Omega Diver, or a 50 Fathoms, Blancpain for the win. But I just don't think that the Blancpain's famous enough that people would jump out and say, "Ooh, I'm going to go buy that."
It doesn't have to. You can't pull the same marketing trick twice, so you have to change the trick. So the trick this time was that the Moon watch sold the Moon Swatch, and that created the buzz. Now what you do is, and the Swatch leveraged Omega. What you would do with 50 Fathoms, and why I would do that, is you're reversing the polarity. What you're doing now is drawing people with all of the hype of the Moon Swatch and what they did, and you're dragging their attention back to, as you say, a watch that gets lost, that people don't know about. And you'd be saying, so instead of you're not using Blancpain to sell swatches, you're now using Swatch to sell Blancpains. And I'll say the next one after that, Breguet Type 20.
I'm not familiar with that watch.
So
exactly, Sam.
Well, Pete, my take would be they have to do a watch that has a cool shape. And even though I feel like I've said Ploprof 8 times today, if they made a plasticized Ploprof or something that, you know, once again was just so iconic to look at, I think that would be an awesome plasticized watch.
Yeah, I know. I think it would be a great watch. I just don't think it fulfills what Swatch and the Swatch group is trying to get out of this. Because you can imagine it would almost be like the theme becomes across the Swatch group that the Swatch brand kind of has its master's collection where, you know, you could walk into a Swatch boutique, you know, and that's going to drive Sam nuts. And then on the side on one wall, they have the Swatch Masters collection.
That's actually a great idea.
Masters.
And then you've got like all the best things out of the Swatch group. So imagine a wall where you've got the Speedmaster, and then you've got the 50 Fathoms, and then you've got the Type 20, and then I don't know what you would come up with next. Maybe by that stage you're ready to go back to the Seamaster well.
Dude, that's a genius freaking idea, man.
I mean, I can see that. As you said, it's elevating the lower popularity brands within the Swatch group.
Yes.
I've always wondered why there wasn't a fast food restaurant like that. There was a place where you could go get like a Big Mac and a Whopper, but made by someone else with a slightly different take on it. But all you're going to do is get like the home run hitters of each place.
Yeah,
there is a place like that now in Russia.
Yeah, if I could get a McDouble and a Frosty, I'd be the happiest man in town.
Well, it's funny you should. Well, first of all, it's funny you should say that about the different burgers, because my wife. This might cause controversy, but my wife and I went sort of vegan or plant-based a few years ago, and a lot of vegan restaurants you go to, especially now the Beyond Burger is out that really tastes like it's a meat substitute. A lot of them do the cheeky homages to, actually, you can get like a Big Mac version, like usual vegan Big Mac version of it, or you'll get different things. But it was funny, this Canadian watch monkey was saying, how about the khaki Field at $200, a plastic version, which would be full circle, wouldn't it? Because isn't that watch based on a plastic watch from Vietnam that was issued to a Hamilton one that was issued to the the soldiers then.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be interesting making a premium watch of a watch that was very much a sort of a consumer throwaway. Yeah, a lot of people have mentioned, when I did my video, a lot of people were saying, what about a Hamilton khaki or something like that? I think they're too close. One of the things that makes these watches kind of fun is the tension between $250 and $10,000. You need that tension. Yeah. A cheap version of a cheap watch is just an even cheaper watch.
Yeah, you bang on. You need that shock factor, don't they? Like a plastic Panerai or something that was, that really is jarring, because that Speedmaster was jarring when you first saw it.
Right.
And the fact that the case was a 1-to-1 replica just done in the bioceramic was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that was fun. Any final thoughts on that?
I was just thinking, what if LVMH did one, right? Let's go to them. I was going to say, what about the Bulgari Octafamissimo? I can't even say it. Famissimo. which is already very iconic in terms of its shape, right? What if they did that, plasticized it? Bulgari. I don't know. I mean,
the LVMH didn't. Was it? Oh no, it was Balenciaga, wasn't it? That did the expensive Crocs that were platform Crocs. So the fashion companies do cheeky little nods to things, don't they? Awesome. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Thank you to my panel for another great show. Thank you to everyone in the comments that participated. And we'll see you next Sunday on the Sunday Social, but on Tuesday for the regular Casual Watch Talk Live. We would love it if you upvoted this, if you subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Pete at Not So Obvious Watches, Patrick at Pocket Watch Time. Head on over to Jason at Watch Rolling's podcast. And we'll see you all next time on Casual Watch Talk Live. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Yeah.